So this week we named it Reality Check. So we're going to be identifying beliefs, realistic expectations, and talking about management and just challenging them. And the overarching goal of this is to just evaluate and analyze the system that we use to map or organize information. And so I think that when we can just identify it for what it is, it makes it a lot easier to change them and it removes the emotion from it. And so for our first day, we decided to talk about stereotyping and generalization.
All right, and the definitions that, working definitions that I came up with for stereotype is an opinion, belief about a certain thing, person, or place based on some second-hand information, experience, or otherwise that generalizes said object. And for a generalization, I came up with assumptions made about categories of things, people, and places based on information about those things. So, what I also wrote in my notes was that it's helpful to just recognize that we do this, as Lakin said, as a map for, an organization for all the information we get. And, before, when we were planning out our conversation a little bit, we talked about how we often group similarities, but we forget about all the possible differences. And, so our brain does this thing where we're just like, yeah, that person's like that person, so we can expect the same things from them. And, everybody has experience with either being generalized or generalizing something, or stereotyping, I guess. And it's difficult, when you're not aware of that you're doing it, to recognize why you were so disappointed with your expectation to begin with. And so, if you can figure out, what your brain is doing a little better, or just start being aware that we do it so easily, so frequently, if everybody's going forward on a freeway, you're going to generalize or assume or, whatever, that everyone's going to keep going forward. This is why people get rear-ended, because we make that assumption and then we get, our expectation is not accurate. And so that.
Yeah, and I think it's different to identify that stereotyping and expectations, like, they're different. Even though we make these general assumptions about people or, the end result of situations and in relationships, when you're doing expectations, they're seems like a little bit more personal and emotionally driven, right? You're attached to the outcome. And then when it comes to stereotyping, the reason why we do that is to get kind of this outline. I was telling you about it before. We need some sort of boundary or template to work with. And so, they're not all bad and they're not all good, but it gives you an outline to decide, like, it at least maps out part of the spectrum, right? So if the stereotype is like right here and the spectrum's out here, you at least know that there's some kind of gray area. And it's easy to get attached to outcomes and ideas and expect things to go the exact way they did last time. And so just the possibility of recognizing it on a spectrum and realizing your stereotypes and generalizations are only a tool to help you map to create a template for mapping and organizing information or relationships or people or how you handle things. It helps us learn and retain the information. And so then moving forward, our brain calls back on those memories and it finds patterns, right? We find patterns, and that's how we store things in our brain. And so it's really easy for us to, make a common connection based on a stereotype. But just flipping it around the other way, like, it sure doesn't feel good to be stereotyped, right? And so it's just worth, identifying and being willing to look at it and challenge them. And the stereotyping and generalization part is really important because it's kind of the foundation of what we build on, right? So we get these stereotypes from our society and we get to decide if we agree with them or not. And if we do agree with them, then we're going to continue those beliefs kind of in our world, how we're interacting with other people. We're going to pass it down, but we're also going to attract people who have similar beliefs as us. And so being able to change that and just understand that's all it is. It's just, someone's idea of what has already happened, and a couple people, have done a similar pattern, and so a stereotype gets made. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, it sounds like you're talking a lot about I guess societal stereotypes that we adopted beliefs.
Yeah.
We can get into. I think we can start getting into some more graduated concepts like we talked about confirmation bias. This is a good example of where confirmation bias can be. Really present. We look for confirmation of what we believe, and as soon as we find it, we're like, yep, I was right. It's just it's a natural thing we do, and if we don't acknowledge a lot of the possibilities of how maybe that's not helpful, or that we're doing it at least, it can be damaging. And really the goal for me that I think about when I think about this is to just simply try and be more aware and in control of my thoughts and expectations, because I expect things. I just expect things all the time.
Yeah, and like when we get into stereotyping or confirmation bias, right? That's what you were just talking about. Like, it's a big deal in relationships. Because if you are in relationships with people who tend to not love you the right way or love you in your love language, right? Then you are expecting that and looking for people who will co-sign or confirm that belief in you. And so if we have these stereotypes, just simply naming it for what it is gives you the opportunity to change it, right? Like, we know stereotypes are really fluid. And so, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, another thing that I kind of touched on it, but I'm going to go a different route, which is that there's a lot of information, and we latch onto the stuff that we understand, and our brain can't process all the information. We basically live on a survival safety level a lot of the time, and so we're just taking the safety information, processing it. As soon as we are not safe, we can start taking other information and filling out the needs. And so, we don't want to forget about all the stuff we talked about and worked on last week, the needs and stuff like that. We have needs, and we look for confirmation that our needs are being filled, or that we have a connection with the people around us, and
That
all
we're
these
not
things.
wasting time.
Yeah,
I think that's a big thing, right?
Yeah, and so we want to incorporate all of those things into this week as well. Some of the things that I wrote also were that we are meaning-making machines. We have our brain has a need to explain everything around us to us so that we feel safe. Without understanding your surroundings, it really jeopardizes your safety feeling. And so...
Yeah, and then that leads to like anxiety and depression and discomfort, because I was just, telling you at the store, I'm trying to come up with some kind of reason behind like a situation that had just happened. And my brain, I will just search and search and search until I have a reason for it, because it doesn't make sense. And we need things to make sense, so it's helpful.
Yeah, so once we understand that, we can, I have sometimes an unrealistic need to understand everything. And it's like, I have to identify that need and just kind of surrender that I'm not going to know a lot of things. And I just have to be okay with that. And then just try and know the things that I can know.
Well,
and
you don't need to know them.
I feel like that sometimes, though. Like I have this need for information, and you're right. It's not a real need.
It comes from a safety thing,
right,
so that you can protect yourself and know what to expect.
Absolutely.
And make sure you're
preparation.
prepared. Yeah. So, but recognizing that we tend to go in these patterns of fear, and really that drives most of the decisions that we make, is helpful, right?
Yeah.
Well, I think that's it for day one.
Yeah, I think it will.
Okay. Bye, guys.